The Admiral's heart stopped at 9:47 p.m. Every senior surgeon in that trauma room had tried. Every protocol had failed. Yes. The monitors were screaming the blood wasn't stopping, and the most decorated Navy SEAL in the building was dying on a table, while a room full of experts stood arguing over his body. Then a 24-year-old rookie nurse, 7 months on the job, invisible to everyone, pushed through them, picked up the instrument no one else had reached for, and did something that should have been impossible. She saved him. And that was only the beginning of the worst night of her life. Subscribe right now, hit that bell, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far this story reaches. The call came in at 9:19. Emma Clark was in the supply room counting gauze pads, which was, as her charge nurse Linda had made perfectly clear, on her very first week, exactly the kind of task that 7-month rookies were assigned when the real work was happening elsewhere. Count the gauze. Restock the saline bags. Stay out of the way and learn by watching. Emma counted the gauze. She had gotten very good over the past 7 months at making herself small, at occupying the background of rooms without drawing attention to herself, at moving through St. Helena Emergency Center with the specific practiced invisibility of someone who had learned in conditions considerably more dangerous than a New Jersey hospital, that being underestimated was not always a disadvantage. She was on her 4th count of the gauze when the radio on the wall crackled. Trauma Bay 1, GSW multiple, ETA 4 minutes. Dull senior staff Trauma Bay 1. Emma set down the gauze pad she was holding. Gunshot wound. Multiple. 4 minutes. Her hands were completely still. She picked the gauze pad back up, placed it in the correct bin, and walked out of the supply room toward the corridor. Not running, walking. Because she had learned also in conditions considerably more dangerous than this, that running before you had full situational awareness was how people made mistakes that cost lives. She would get to the trauma bay. She would stand at the back. She would watch and she would learn, and she would do exactly what a 7-month rookie nurse was supposed to do in a mass casualty situation, which was stay out of the way and be ready to hand someone whatever they asked for. That was the plan. The plan lasted until the gurney came through the doors. The paramedics were moving fast, the specific controlled urgency of people who have been running a patient for multiple minutes and know that every second between the field and the table costs something irretrievable. Emma heard them before she saw them, the rapid-fire handoff already in progress as the wheels hit the trauma bay floor. Admiral Richard Voss, 62 years old, Navy SEAL Command 3 GSW, left chest right, abdomen right shoulder. Pressure dropped in the field. We got it back to 90/60, but it's been trending down for the last 8 minutes. GCS is 12. He was conscious on scene verbal, but he's going in and out. Emma was standing at the back left corner of the trauma bay. She had positioned herself against the wall with a clear sight line to the table without being in anyone's path. Standard, appropriate, invisible. She looked at the man on the gurney. Admiral Richard Voss was a large man, broad through the chest and shoulders, even beneath the trauma dressings and the blood-soaked clothing the paramedics had cut away. His face was gray in the way faces go gray when the body is making difficult decisions about where to send its remaining resources. His right hand, she noticed, was moving not randomly, but with purpose, the fingers pressing rhythmically against the gurney rail. That movement. She filed it away and said nothing. Let's go, Dr. Reeves. I need you on chest. Dr. Kang, abdomen. Where the hell is Martinez? That was Dr. Harold Sutton, 60 years old, chief of trauma surgery, with the voice and bearing of a man who had been the most experienced person in every room he had walked into for the past 20 years. He was good. Emma knew he was good. She had watched him work for 7 months, and she had never once doubted his competence. But she was watching his hands right now, and his hands were moving with urgency rather than precision, which meant that Sutton was operating in reactive mode, responding to the visible injuries, addressing the presenting crisis, doing exactly what the protocols dictated in exactly the order they dictated it, which was correct, except for one thing. Emma looked at the Admiral's face, at the movement of his right hand against the rail, at the specific asymmetric way his chest was rising, at the color of the blood, the color and the rate coming through the abdominal dressing. She felt something cold and clear settle over her. The specific cognitive state that combat medics called tunnel focus, not panic, not adrenaline, but the complete crystalline narrowing of perception that happened when the body recognized it was operating in a situation where getting it wrong was not recoverable. She had felt it twice before, once in Kandahar Province 2019, once in Helmand 2020. She felt it now in a trauma bay in New Jersey, standing at the back wall while 6 senior physicians worked on a dying man. She stayed where she was, for now. BP is dropping 78 over 50. Get another line in now. Chest x-ray is up. Left hemothorax confirmed. I need a chest tube. Somebody get me a chest tube. The abdominal bleed is the primary issue, Harold, if we don't get in there. I know what the primary issue is, David. I don't need. His pressure is not responding to volume. The room was loud with the specific chaos of competent people under pressure making good decisions that were not the right decision. Emma had seen this before too, not in hospitals but in the field, the dynamic that happens when a team of highly trained people each see a piece of the problem clearly and none of them are seeing the complete picture and the noise of their individual certainties drowns out the signal. She looked at the Admiral's right hand. It had stopped moving. Not because he'd lost consciousness, his eyes were still open tracking. He had stopped moving it deliberately, like someone who had been sending a signal and had just received confirmation that no one was reading it. Emma pushed off the wall. She moved to the right side of the gurney, not pushing through, not interrupting, just repositioning herself to the rail where the Admiral's right hand had been pressing. She looked at the specific place his fingers had been rhythmically touching. It wasn't random, it was a location. Upper right quadrant, specific, deliberate. He'd been pointing to it the entire time since he came through the door, and no one had been looking at his hand because everyone was looking at his chest x-ray and his vitals and his 3 documented wounds. Emma looked at that quadrant. She looked at the way the abdominal dressing was sitting, the angle, the distribution of blood saturation across it. She looked at the bruising pattern visible above the dressing's upper edge, and she understood. Dr. Sutton, she said. Nobody heard her. The room was too loud, the conversation too layered. Dr. Sutton, louder this time. Sutton looked up from the chest tube he was prepping. He looked at her the way he always looked at her, brief, functional recognition, the look of a man cataloging a resource. Clark, I need more gloves, medium. Get them from... There's a 4th wound, Emma said. The room did not go quiet, not immediately, but Sutton's hands paused, just for a fraction of a second. The 3 GSWs are documented, he said. Paramedics were thorough. He has a penetrating abdominal wound in the upper right quadrant that wasn't caught on field assessment, Emma said. She kept her voice even. Clinical, the voice she'd learned to use when she needed to be heard by people who didn't want to hear her. It's small entry, possibly fragmentation, rather than a clean round. The blood pattern on the dressing is wrong for a single abdominal entry. He's been indicating the location since he came in. Sutton looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Clark, you've been here 7 months. Do not... His pressure isn't responding to volume because he has a second abdominal bleed source, Emma said. If you open him up without knowing it's there, you're going to lose him on the table. The room was very loud, and then it was very quiet. Dr. David Kang, 44 abdominal specialist, 3 years at St. Helena, looked at Emma. Then he looked at the Admiral's abdomen. Something shifted in his expression. Not agreement, but the particular alertness of a physician who has just been told something that conflicts with his current plan and is involuntarily checking his own assumptions. Show me what you're seeing, Kang said. Sutton's head snapped toward him. David. Show me, Kang said again. To Emma moved to the table. She did not touch the patient, she pointed. She walked Kang through the blood pattern, the bruising angle, the specific asymmetry, and how the dressing was sitting. She did it in under 45 seconds because that was all the time she had, and she knew it. Kang looked at the dressing. He looked at Emma. He looked at the dressing again. I need a focused ultrasound right upper quadrant, he said. Now. David, we don't have time for, Sutton started. 45 seconds, Kang said. Give me 45 seconds. The ultrasound took 38. The image that came up on the screen produced a silence in the trauma bay that was different from all the silences before it. Not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of a room full of experts looking at something that confirmed what none of them had wanted to hear. Free fluid, right upper quadrant, secondary collection. Significant. There it is, Kang said quietly. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Sutton said, Get OR2 on the line. We're going up in 4 minutes. He did not look at Emma. His voice was completely level. Good catch, he said in the tone of a man who was never going to say those words again and was aware of it. Emma stepped back. The Admiral's eyes found her. He was still conscious, barely running on something harder than adrenaline. At this point, the specific reserve that some people carry that has less to do with physiology than with the absolute refusal to stop. He looked at her directly. His right hand moved once a single deliberate press against the rail. Emma understood. She gave him one small nod. Then the team was moving the gurney, rolling toward the elevator, and the trauma bay was emptying around her in the rapid, purposeful evacuation of a team en route to a different theater. Emma stood in the middle of the empty bay. Her hands were still steady. She turned and went back toward the supply room. The surgery took 4 hours and 11 minutes. Emma knew because she was still on shift, and she tracked it the way she tracked everything, quietly, precisely, without making it visible to anyone else. She did her work. She restocked the trauma bay. She completed her charting. She answered when she was called and disappeared when she wasn't, the practiced invisibility, running on a kind of automatic pilot, while a different part of her mind sat with what she'd seen on that ultrasound screen and what it had meant and how close it had been. Very close. She thought about his hand on the rail. A Navy SEAL Admiral, 3 gunshot wounds, pressure dropping, surrounded by a team of expert physicians, and he had spent 6 minutes of the most critical window of his survival trying to tell someone something that only a combat medic trained in field assessment under fire would have known to look for. She thought about what that said about him. She thought about what it said about her. At 1:17 in the morning, Linda, her charge nurse, found her in the corridor outside the supply room and said with an expression that was carefully neutral, in the way of someone carrying news they weren't sure how to deliver. Sutton wants to see you, his office. Emma finished writing the supply count she was recording. Capped the pen. Now, he said when you had a moment. Linda paused, but he said it like he meant now. Emma put the clipboard down. All right. She found Sutton in his office, which was small and over-documented, in the way of a man who had spent decades making decisions in public and retreating into private spaces that held evidence of everything he'd gotten right. He was sitting behind his desk. Kang was there too, standing near the window. Neither of them said anything when Emma came in and sat down. Sutton looked at her for a long moment. The Admiral is out of surgery, he said. Stable. They found exactly what you said they'd find: fragmentation, wound upper, right quadrant secondary hemorrhage source. If Kang hadn't done the ultrasound when he did, he stopped. His jaw worked. He would have died on the table. I know, Emma said. How did you know? Sutton asked. And I want a real answer, not the thing you said in the bay about blood patterns. I've been reading blood patterns for 30 years. I didn't see what you saw. Emma was quiet for a moment. His hand, she said. He was pointing to the location. He knew where the bleed was. He'd been hit. He knew what he'd been hit by, and he was trying to communicate it. He'd been doing it since the gurney came through the door. She paused. And the blood pattern and the bruising angle, all of it together. Sutton looked at her steadily. That kind of assessment in a trauma bay under those conditions, that's not nursing school training. Emma said nothing. Clark. Sutton's voice shifted, dropped out of the clinical register into something more direct. The voice of a man who had just spent 4 hours in a surgical suite because a 7-month rookie nurse had told him to look somewhere he wasn't looking, and who had the intellectual honesty to follow that experience to its logical question. Where did you learn that? A pause. Emma looked at him, then at Kang. Then she said, Afghanistan. The words sat in the room differently than other words. Sutton blinked. You're a vet. Combat medic, 2 tours. She paused. SEAL support unit. A silence. Kang said quietly, you were embedded with a SEAL unit. Yes. Which unit? Emma looked at him. That's classified. Another silence. A different kind. The kind that happens when information lands in a room and immediately reveals that there is more information underneath it that isn't going to surface easily. Sutton leaned back in his chair. He looked at her the way people look at something they've been looking at for 7 months and are only now actually seeing. Wayne, you've been counting gauze, he said. I've been doing my wow, Emma said. He stopped. He pressed his hand flat on his desk. Why didn't you tell us? Emma held his gaze. Because I was doing my room, she said again. A 7-month nurse counts gauze and restocks the supply room and stays out of the way. That's the job. I was doing it. Until tonight, Kang said. Until tonight, she agreed. Sutton was quiet for a long moment. The expression on his face was complex, something moving through it that included in roughly equal measure professional reassessment, personal embarrassment, and the particular discomfort of a man who was very good at his work, realizing that his assumptions had nearly cost a patient's life. The protocol violation, he said finally. Emma went still. You gave a clinical assessment in a trauma situation without being asked and without the authority to do so, Sutton said. His voice was careful. You directed a senior specialist diagnostic decision. That is a protocol violation, Clark, regardless of the outcome. I know, Emma said. I have to report it. I know that too. And the outcome, Sutton said, does not change the protocol. Emma looked at him. I understand. She stood up. And then something happened that she did not expect. Kang said, Harold. Just that, one word, the specific tone of a person asking their colleague to reconsider. Sutton looked at Kang. Something passed between them, the rapid private communication of two people who have worked together long enough to conduct arguments in a look. Sutton said nothing for a long moment. Then, I'll make the report in the morning, he said. Go finish your shift. Emma went back to work. She was at the nurse's station at 2:45 in the morning, charting with the steady focus of someone who was deliberately not letting the events of the past 5 hours sit heavily in her hands, when she heard footsteps in the corridor that she identified before she looked up as wrong. Not hospital footsteps, not the particular rhythm of medical staff moving through a building. They owned the proprietary ease of people in their own environment. These were different, contained, deliberate, sweeping. She looked up. Two men in dark civilian clothing, not scrubs, not white coats, not the relaxed dress of visitors, were moving through the corridor with the specific scanning purpose of people conducting a security assessment. They were not looking at the charts on the walls, or the room numbers, or the nursing station. They were looking at exit points, at camera positions, at the angles between the elevator bank and the stairwell, and the exterior doors. Emma set her pen down very carefully. She had done security sweeps. She knew what they looked like. She looked at the two men. They had not seen her yet. She was at the far end of the station, partially blocked by a monitor bank, and the instinct toward invisibility was so deeply conditioned in her that she had, without thinking, positioned herself in the low visibility corner of her workspace. Old habit. Right now, a potentially life-saving one. The taller of the two men stopped. He turned his head slowly, professionally, the practiced visual sweep of someone trained to check all quadrants. His eyes passed over the monitor bank, almost moved on, then stopped. He had seen her. Not her face, the bank was still in the way, but the shape of her, the position, the stillness of a person who was not moving the way people move when they have nothing to hide. He said something to the second man. Quiet. Emma couldn't hear it. The second man looked at his phone, looked up, looked at the station, looked at his phone again. Then he said also quiet, two words that Emma caught because she had spent years learning to read mouths in situations too loud for ears. That's her. Emma stood up. She walked, not running, not fast, the same controlled pace she'd used coming out of the supply room 3 hours ago, toward the side corridor that led to the medication prep room, and from there to the staff exit on the east side of the building. She heard footsteps behind her. Not chasing, not yet. Following. She pushed through the staff exit door and stepped outside into the cold night air of the parking lot behind St. Helena Emergency Center. And she stopped. Because every exit from that parking lot, the north gate, the south gate, the street side pedestrian exit had a black SUV parked in front of it. Not one, not two. She counted without moving her head the way she'd been trained to count peripheral and comprehensive. 10 black SUVs. And men standing beside each, one hands at their sides facing inward, facing her. Emma stood very still in the cold air. Her hands were at her sides. Her breathing was controlled. She was running assessment the way she'd run it in Kandahar, in Helmand, in every situation where the geometry of the ground had been arranged around her, and she needed before she did anything else to understand by whom and for what purpose. A figure separated from the group nearest the south gate, walked towards her at a steady, unthreatening pace. Mid-40s dark jacket, hands visible, deliberately, pointedly visible. The universal signal of a professional approach. He stopped 6 feet away. "Emma Clark," he said, not a question. "Emma Clark, formerly Staff Sergeant Clark, 3rd SEAL Support Battalion, Classified Deployment, Helmand Province, 2020. He paused. "We're not here to hurt you. We need you to understand that before anything else." Emma looked at him, at the 10 SUVs, at the men at the perimeter who were good enough that they didn't look like a perimeter but were absolutely a perimeter. "Then what are you here for?" she said. The man looked at her for a moment, something in his expression, not sympathy but something adjacent to it. The look of a person who knows they are about to say something that will change everything and is taking a single breath before they say it. "The Admiral," he said. "The man you saved tonight." He paused. "He's the only other person left alive who knows what happened to your unit in Helmand." Emma didn't move. "We have a problem," the man said, "and you're the only person who can help us solve it." The cold night was very quiet. Emma looked at the 10 black SUVs. She looked at the men at the perimeter. She looked at the man 6 feet in front of her with his hands visible and his face carrying the particular expression of someone telling the truth in a situation where the truth was not the whole story. She thought about Helmand, about 2020, about the mission that had gone wrong in a way that no mission goes wrong by accident, about the 7 men who had been in that unit besides herself, and the fact that she was the only one who had come home. She thought about an admiral with 3 gunshot wounds who had spent 6 minutes trying to point to his own injury because he trusted in the worst moment of his life that someone in the room would know what to look for. "Start talking," Emma said, and the night began in earnest. The man's name was Agent Callahan. He told her that in the first 30 seconds, which Emma noted because people who want to control a situation usually don't lead with their real name. Either he was telling the truth or he was good enough that the name didn't matter. Neither option was particularly comforting. "We can talk out here," he said, "or we can sit down somewhere warm. Your call." Emma looked at him. "We talk here." He nodded once. He had the quality of a man who had expected that answer. "Fair enough." He glanced briefly at the perimeter. A single look had communicated something to the men at the SUVs without a word, and then brought his attention back to her completely. "What do you know about Operation Nightfall?" The name hit her like a physical thing. She kept her face still. She had gotten very good at keeping her face still. "That's classified," she said. "It was classified," Callahan said. Past tense. 18 months ago, the classification was lifted as part of an internal DoD review. The review was triggered because someone started asking questions about the casualty report. He paused, specifically about why the casualty report listed all 8 members of the unit as killed in action. Emma said nothing. "You're not dead, Staff Sergeant Clark," Callahan said. "I noticed," Emma said. "The report says you are." He reached into his jacket, slow, deliberate hands announced before they moved, and produced a folded document. He held it out. "Your name, your service number. KIA Helmand Province, March 14th, 2020. Emma took the document. She read it. It was her. Exactly her. Service record photograph, the whole official architecture of a life that had been filed away and closed like a finished case. She folded it back up, handed it back. "I've been working as a nurse in New Jersey for 7 months, she said, "under my own name. If someone filed this, they did a bad job of following through." "They didn't need to follow through," Callahan said. "You disappeared voluntarily. You came back from Helmand, you processed out, you went quiet. You didn't file any claims, you didn't contact anyone from the unit's support network, you didn't push on the investigation. From their perspective, the problem solved itself." He looked at her directly. "Until tonight." Emma felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the night air. "Until tonight," she repeated. "Admiral Richard Voss has been running a private investigation into Operation Nightfall for 2 years, Callahan said. "He was the commanding officer who ordered the mission. He's been living with the casualty report for 5 years, and 8 months ago he found something in the original mission intelligence that didn't add up. He started pulling threads." He paused. 3 people who knew he was pulling threads have died in the past 6 months. Car accidents, medical events, 1 drowning. Another pause. Tonight, someone put 3 bullets in him. Emma absorbed this. Who knows he was investigating, she asked. That's the problem, Callahan said. The list of people who knew is very short, and everyone on it has significant institutional access. He held her gaze. Someone inside the chain leaked the mission coordinates in 2020. The same someone has been covering it since. And tonight they decided that Voss was close enough to the truth that he needed to be stopped. Emma was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the 7 men. She thought about their faces. She had spent 5 years working very hard not to think about their faces, and she was thinking about them now, with a clarity that 5 years of deliberate suppression had done nothing to diminish. Sergeant Danny Kowalski, 29 years old, from Pittsburgh, had a daughter he'd never met. Corporal Terrence Webb, 26, Houston, could fix any engine ever built. 5 others, 7 total, all of them dead in a valley in Helmand Province on a night when the intelligence said the route was clear and the route was not clear, and the ambush that was waiting for them was too precisely positioned to be anything other than planned. What do you need from me? Emma said. Voss was carrying something when he came in tonight, Callahan said. Documentation, encrypted. He knew he was being targeted. He knew it before he left his vehicle tonight, and he took precautions. There is a data drive that he had on his person when the ambulance picked him up. He paused. It wasn't on him when he arrived at the hospital. It wasn't recovered at the scene, which means either it was taken from him at the scene before the ambulance arrived or he gave it to someone, Emma said. Callahan looked at her. He was conscious on scene for approximately 4 minutes before the paramedics reached him. There was one civilian present, a woman who called 911 and was gone by the time units arrived. We don't have an ID on her yet. He paused. Or he gave it to someone in the hospital, someone he trusted to hold it until he could tell us where it was. Emma thought about the Admiral's hand on the gurney rail, the specific deliberate pressing, the way his eyes had found hers when she'd stepped forward. She had read it as communication about the wound location. She thought about it again now with different context. His right hand, she said almost to herself. Callahan's attention sharpened. What about it? He was pressing his hand against the gurney rail when he came in. I read it as him indicating the wound location in upper right quadrant, which is where the 4th bleed was. She stopped. But his hand was on the rail for 6 minutes. He was doing it before I came close enough for him to know I'd understood. What are you saying? Emma looked at him. I'm saying he may have been doing 2 things at the same time, indicating the wound and, she paused. What kind of data drive? Callahan reached into his jacket again. He showed her a photograph on his phone, a small device, thumb-size matte black, with a distinctive triangular notch on the left side. Military spec. The kind of thing that looked like nothing if you did not know what you were looking at and looked like exactly what it was if you did. Emma looked at the photograph. Then she looked at Callahan. I need to go back inside, she said. He followed her without being invited, which she had expected. She pushed back through the staff exit back into the corridor, moving with purpose now. Not the controlled invisibility of her regular pace, but something faster, more direct. Callahan kept up without crowding her, which she noted and filed. Professional, well-trained, not Navy. She thought the bearing was different, the spacing was different, something more lateral, intelligence adjacent. She went to the trauma bay. The bay had been cleaned and reset after the Admiral went up to surgery, standard protocol. Everything stripped and restocked, the physical evidence of the past hour's crisis removed with the efficient thoroughness of a team that processed emergencies for a living. Emma went directly to the gurney. It had been wiped down, the rail cleaned, everything sanitized. She crouched down. She looked at the underside of the right rail, the section where the Admiral's hand had been pressing for 6 minutes. There was a small piece of medical tape, half-inch wide, adhered to the inner surface of the rail, where the underside met the frame. Under the tape, pressed flat and invisible to anyone not looking for it, was a matte black device with a triangular notch on the left side. Emma reached under and pulled it free. She held it in her palm and looked at it for a moment. Then she looked up at Callahan, who was standing 4 feet away, with an expression that had gone from professional neutrality to something considerably less controlled, the look of a man who had just watched something happen that he had believed might not be findable. He knew, Emma said. He knew who saved him, or he guessed, or she stopped. He knew someone with field training would be the person who understood what he was doing with his hand. He put it where a medic would look. Callahan was very quiet. He put it where you would look, he said. Emma stood up. She held the drive out to Callahan. He shook his head. We need you to hold it. She pulled her hand back. That's not a reasonable request. It's the only one that makes sense right now, Callahan said. His voice was still level, but something had shifted underneath it, the controlled urgency of a man working against a clock that Emma couldn't see. The people who shot Voss know he had the drive. They know it wasn't recovered at the scene. They know it came here with him. If I walk out of this building with it, there is a very specific set of people who will know within 6 hours, because those specific people have access to the operational security feeds of my unit. He paused. But nobody is watching the movements of a 7-month rookie nurse in New Jersey. Emma looked at him. You have a leak. We have a leak, he said. In a unit with 6 people, we have a leak, and I don't know which one of the 6 it is, and until I do, I cannot carry that drive out of this building without the probability that it gets intercepted before it reaches the people who need to see what's on it. Emma held the drive in her closed hand. It was very small. The weight of it was negligible, and physically it was nothing. What it contained apparently was something different. What's on it? She asked. The mission intelligence from Nightfall, the original unredacted version, with the source notation. He held her gaze. The name of the person who provided the false route clearance. The name. Emma's hand tightened around the drive. 5 years, she said quietly. 5 years, Callahan agreed. 7 men. Yes. She stood in the empty trauma bay, with the weight of it settling over her, not the drive itself, which was nothing but everything it represented. 5 years of working in hospital supply rooms and counting gauze pads and making herself invisible and carrying the specific grinding weight of having survived something that should have killed everyone, including her. 5 years of not asking questions because asking questions meant pulling at threads that led back to a night she had spent every subsequent day trying to get distance from. And now a man with 3 gunshot wounds had put a piece of the answer in a place where only she would think to look. I'll keep it, she said, for now until you've identified the leak. Callahan exhaled the small, controlled release of a man who had been holding something tight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Emma said. I want to know everything, not the operational summary. Everything. What Voss found, who he suspects, what the current threat assessment is. She looked at him steadily. And I want to know why 3 people are dead and whoever did this is still inside the chain. Callahan looked at her for a moment. That's going to take more than one conversation. Then start now, Emma said. He started. He told her that Operation Nightfall had been a surveillance and extraction mission, a SEAL team inserting into a specific valley in Helmand to extract a high-value intelligence asset who had been providing information on Taliban supply routes. Standard mission architecture, well-planned, with triple verified route clearance, signed off at 3 separate command levels. The clearance was falsified at the source, not altered after the fact, falsified at origin by whoever provided the initial intelligence en route safety. By the time the mission was already in the air, the valley had been cleared of civilians and populated with fighters who knew exactly where the unit was going and exactly when they would arrive. 7 men dead, Emma the sole survivor because she had been running rear security, and the initial contact hit the front element first, and she had done what her training told her to do in a compromised ambush, which was move off the line of fire and find high ground. She had gotten 2 men out by the time the valley was too hot to stay in. Both of them died of their wounds before extraction reached them. She had written the casualty report herself, from memory, in a field hospital, with her hands still shaking from the exfil. The falsified clearance, Emma said. Where does it originate? That's what's on the drive, Callahan said. Voss spent 2 years tracing it back through the intelligence chain. The document on that drive shows that the clearance originated from inside a joint special operations task force, command not field level, senior level. Someone with the access and the authority to sign off on route intelligence and have it accepted without secondary verification. Emma absorbed that. Senior level, she said. Command level, Callahan said. How many people are we talking about? At that level with that specific access. He paused. 12 people. We've eliminated 9 through independent verification. 3 remain. He looked at her. One of them has significant ties to this hospital, has for years. Medical board connections, charitable donations, institutional relationships that run deep and wide. Emma felt the cold settle deeper. Who, she said. Callahan hesitated, the first hesitation he had shown in the entire conversation. Not the hesitation of someone who didn't know, the hesitation of someone measuring the consequence of saying it out loud. We need the drive's contents confirmed before I give you a name, he said. The document has an authentication component, a specific embedded verification that will confirm the source chain is unbroken. Once we have that, the name becomes actionable. Without it, it's a theory. A theory that's already gotten 3 people killed, Emma said. Yes, he said, which is why we move carefully. Emma thought about that. She thought about careful and about what careful had cost, and about 7 men in a valley in Helmand who had died because someone with a command-level security clearance had decided that their lives were worth less than whatever they were protecting or buying with the information they'd sold. How long to verify the authentication, she asked. Once the drive is in the right hand's hours, maybe less. He paused. The problem is getting it there without the leak knowing it's moving. Emma looked at the drive in her hand. What's my protocol, she said. If something happens tonight, if someone comes for it. Callahan looked at her steadily. Don't let them have it. That's not a protocol, Emma said. No, he agreed. It isn't. He reached into his jacket one more time and produced a card, plain white, a phone number handwritten on one side. Nothing else. Well, that number will reach me directly. If anything changes, if anyone approaches you about the drive or about tonight, you call that number. He paused. Don't call the police. Don't call hospital security. Don't tell anyone in this building. Another pause, including Dr. Sutton. Emma looked at the card. You know about Sutton. We know about everyone in this building, as Callahan said. That's the nature of the problem. A silence. You said someone in this building has ties to the task force command, Emma said. That's why you said including Sutton. Callahan said nothing, which was an answer. Emma put the card in her scrub pocket. She closed her hand around the drive. She thought about the supply room and the gauze pads and the 7 months of making herself small in a building full of people who looked at her and saw only what she showed them. She thought about what Callahan had said outside. Nobody is watching the movements of a 7-month rookie nurse. The invisibility she'd spent 7 months cultivating had just become the most important asset she had. All right, she said. I finish my shift at 6. I'll contact you at 7. Callahan nodded. He moved toward the bay door, then stopped. Turned back. Clark. His voice shifted, not softening exactly, but something underneath the operational register, becoming briefly audible. What you did tonight, for Voss, you didn't know who he was. You saw it and you moved. He was a patient, Emma said. He was the man who sent your unit into that valley. The words landed. Emma stood with them. She had not known that, had not recognized the name, when it came through the trauma bay doors, had not in the focused tunnel of the emergency response connected Admiral Richard Voss to the command structure of Operation Nightfall. She knew it now. She stood with it. He was a patient, she said again. Whatever else he is in that room, he was a patient. Callahan looked at her for a long moment. I know, he said quietly. That's why he put the drive where you would find it. He paused. He trusted you before he knew who you were. Think about what that means. He left. Emma stood alone in the clean, reset trauma bay. The drive was in her hand. The card was in her pocket. Outside, she could hear the hospital settling into its 3 a.m. rhythms. The quieter, stranger hours when the emergency slowed slightly and the building ran on a skeleton that moved through it with the practiced ease of people who had long since made peace with the fact that night was not fundamentally different from day when you worked in a place where neither meant much. She put the drive in the inside pocket of her scrub top, pressed her hand flat against it for a moment, feeling the small, hard edge of it through the fabric. Then she straightened up. She had 2 hours and 40 minutes left on her shift. She went back to work. She was at the medication prep station at 4:15, doing the end-of-shift reconciliation when she heard footsteps behind her that she identified before she turned as belonging to someone she knew. Dr. Kang. She turned. He was in his post-surgical clothes, the casual change that physicians made after a long OR session, the transition from professional to something marginally more human. He looked tired in the specific way of someone who had been running on adrenaline for hours and was now feeling the bill for it. He leaned against the doorframe. "Can't sleep," he said. "Long night," Emma said. "Yeah." He looked at her. There was something in his expression beyond the tiredness, a thinking quality, the look of a man who has been turning something over for several hours and hasn't resolved it. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Afghanistan," he said. "SEAL support unit." He paused. "That's not standard combat medic deployment." "No," Emma agreed. "That's specialized training, assessment under firefield surgery, the kind of diagnostic work that you—" He stopped. "What you did tonight, in the trauma bay, that wasn't just good instinct. That was specific trained expertise applied to a civilian emergency setting." He looked at her carefully. "Why are you counting gauze in a New Jersey emergency room?" Emma looked at him for a moment. It was a fair question. It was, in fact, a very good question, and she respected Kang enough to give it the consideration it deserved. He was a good physician, and more than that, he was a person who paid attention. And the combination of those two things was why he'd been the one in the trauma bay tonight who had listened to her. "I needed somewhere quiet," she said. He absorbed that. And now, Emma looked at him steadily. Now it's a little less quiet. Something moved in his expression, concerned something protective in the quality of it. "The men outside earlier," he said. "The SUVs. I saw them from the window on the second floor." Emma said nothing. "Emma," he pushed off the doorframe, came 2 steps closer, lowered his voice. "If you're in trouble—" "I'm not in trouble," she said, which was and was not true simultaneously. "I'm fine, I just need to finish my shift." He looked at her for a long moment, the look of a person who did not entirely believe what they were being told and was deciding whether to push. "Sutton filed the protocol report," he said. Emma went still. "Already?" 20 minutes ago, I tried to talk him out of it." His voice carried the frustration of that failure. He said his hands were tied, which they are technically. The protocol is clear, and he's been chief here long enough that any exception he makes becomes a precedent that gets used against him. He paused. "You're going to get a meeting with HR in the morning. They'll put you on administrative hold, pending review, standard for protocol violations involving patient care decisions." Emma closed her eyes for exactly 1 second, then opened them. Administrative hold. The hospital's version of being grounded access, restricted assignments, suspended her presence in this building, becoming conditional and monitored. On the night when her presence in this building was the one thing standing between a classified intelligence drive and whoever was looking for it. "All right," she said. "I'm sorry," Kang said. "I genuinely am. What you did tonight was a protocol violation," Emma said. "Sutton's right. The outcome doesn't change that." She looked at him. "Don't apologize for him doing his job." Kang looked at her. "You're remarkably calm about this." Emma thought about the drive against her ribs, about Callahan and his 10 SUVs, and the name that was on a document inside a military spec encrypted device that she was going to carry through the rest of her shift like it was nothing. "I've had worse nights," she said. Kang studied her for a moment longer. Then he nodded the slow nod of a man accepting something he didn't fully understand. "Be careful," he said. It was the second time tonight someone had said something to her that landed as more than its surface meaning. "I will," she said. He left. Emma stood alone in the medication prep room. She put her hand flat against the drive through her scrubbed top. She thought about Callahan's words. The traitor who caused the ambush is still operating within the hospital, and she thought about Kang's face and Sutton's voice and the way the night had been reorganizing itself around her since the moment the gurney came through the door. Someone in this building. She had been invisible here for 7 months. She was going to need to stay invisible for a few hours more. But now she was invisible with purpose, and that she knew from experience was the most dangerous version of the thing. She straightened her back. She put her hands at her sides. She thought about Danny Kowalski from Pittsburgh and Terrence Webb from Houston and 5 other men who deserved better than a falsified casualty report and 5 years of silence. She thought about what it meant that the Admiral had put the answer in a place where only she would look. He had trusted her with the thing that could finish what he'd started. She was not going to let him down. Not twice in one night. She walked back out onto the floor and kept working quiet and invisible and absolutely completely awake. The 6 o'clock shift change arrived with the particular indifference of institutional time. The hospital didn't care what had happened. In the past 9 hours didn't register the weight of what Emma was carrying against her ribs, didn't slow its ordinary rhythms for anyone's extraordinary night. The day staff came in, the night staff filed out. Linda caught Emma at the station with the expression of someone delivering bad news they'd been holding since 4 a.m. HR called down, Linda said. They want you at 7:30, room 214. I know, Emma said. Linda looked at her, the specific look of a woman who had been charge nurse for 16 years and had developed through sheer accumulated experience a finely tuned sensitivity to the difference between an employee who was in routine trouble and one who was carrying something considerably heavier. You okay? Fine, Emma said. Emma, Linda lowered her voice. Those men outside last night. Security saw them on camera. There's talk. There's always talk, Emma said. She picked up her bag. She kept her hand away from her chest, away from the jury by conscious effort. I'll be at 7:30. She walked out through the main corridor, not the staff exit. Deliberate, visible. The kind of routing a person took when they had nothing to hide and were simply going home after a long shift. She nodded to two nurses she recognized held the elevator for an orderly. She didn't know moved through the lobby with the unhurried ease of someone whose night had been unremarkable. She was in the parking structure, third level, unlocking her car when her phone buzzed. Not Callahan's number. Unknown. She answered it standing beside her car door with her back against the concrete pillar. Old habit, clear sight lines in 3 directions. Clark. The voice was male, older, with the specific controlled quality of someone speaking through deliberate calm. Don't react. Don't look around. Just listen. Emma's hand was very still on the phone. I know what Callahan told you last night, the voice said. I know about the drive, and I need you to understand something before your 7:30 meeting. Callahan is not who he told you he was. Emma said nothing. His unit is the one with the leak, the voice said. Not a leak inside his unit. His unit is the leak. 3 of the 6 people he reports to have been running interference on the Nightfall investigation for 2 years. A pause. The drive you're carrying, if you give it to Callahan, it disappears. Same as the other 3 people who got close to the answer. Emma stood with the concrete at her back and the phone at her ear and ran the calculation fast and cold. 2 competing sources. One night, one drive with a name on it that someone had already killed 3 people to keep buried. Who are you? She said. Someone who knew your unit, the voice said. Someone who tried to flag the intelligence discrepancy before the mission launched and was told to stand down. A pause that carried weight. I filed a descent report on the route clearance 48 hours before nightfall. It was buried. I've been trying to surface it for 5 years. Emma's jaw tightened. Name. Not on this line, he said. Room 214 is not an HR meeting. It was booked 40 minutes ago by a man named Garrett who is not a hospital employee. He has credentials that will look legitimate. They're not. Another pause. Don't go to that room. The line went dead. Emma lowered the phone. She stood in the parking structure for exactly 30 seconds. 30 seconds of not moving, not deciding, just absorbing the specific cognitive discipline she'd learned when the ground changed under a mission and the plan became worthless. And the only thing that mattered was the next 30 seconds of clear thinking before the next move. 2 sources, opposite stories. One drive. She believed Callahan or she believed the voice. Or she believed neither and she figured it out herself. She chose the third option. She got in her car. She did not drive home. She drove 3 blocks north to the St. Helena Medical Complex parking annex parked on the 2nd level and called Callahan's number. He answered in one ring. Clark. Someone called me, she said. Unknown number. Male, older, claimed your unit is the source of the leak. Claimed the 7:30 meeting as a setup. A silence that lasted 2 seconds too long. Where are you? Callahan said. Not in the hospital, she said. My going to the meeting. Answer my question, is your unit clean? We've run internal verification on 5 of the 6. That's not an answer, Emma said. Clark Callahan. Her voice was flat and absolute. I carried 7 body bags out of a valley in Afghanistan because someone I trusted with my life's safety had already decided to sell it. I do not operate on reassurance. Give me a verifiable fact or give me nothing. A pause. Longer this time. When Callahan spoke again, the operational smoothness was gone, replaced by something rawer and more honest, the voice of a man dropping a register he'd been maintaining at some cost. The 6th member of my unit, he said. I haven't been able to verify him. His access logs for the past 72 hours have a gap I can't account for. Name, Emma said. Garrett, Callahan said. Emma closed her eyes for 1 second. He booked the 7:30 meeting, she said. Silence. He's in the hospital, Callahan said. The operational register was back hard and fast. Don't go back inside. Where's the drive? With me, Emma said. It stays with me until this resolves. Clark, you told me nobody watches a 7-month rookie nurse, she said. That's still true. Garrett doesn't know what I look like. He knows my name and my employee file and nothing else. I have the drive, and I have mobility, and I have the single advantage that everyone in this situation keeps handing me, which is that they keep underestimating what I am. She paused. Tell me what Garrett is after. Specifically, what does he need beyond the drive? Callahan was quiet for 3 seconds. The drive alone is authenticated but not actionable without the witness corroboration. Voss's investigation identified a second document, a signal intercept from the night of the mission that confirms the falsified clearance came from inside the country, not from a foreign intelligence asset. That intercept is in a separate location. Voss was the only person who knew both locations, the drive and the intercept. He paused. Garrett's objective is not just the drive. He needs to know where the intercept is, which means he needs Voss. Emma went cold. Voss is in post-surgical recovery, she said. Garrett has hospital credentials, Callahan said. He has access. Emma was already moving. She was out of the car before Callahan finished the sentence, phone still at her ear, moving through the parking annex stairwell at a pace that was not running, but was everything just short of it, controlled fast. The movement of a person who had learned that urgency and panic were not the same thing, and that confusing them got people killed. What's Voss's room, she said. You can't go in there alone. Room number, Callahan. Surgical recovery, 4th floor, room 412. A pause. I have 2 people outside the building. I can have them inside in 4 minutes. Garrett has 4 minutes then, Emma said. She pushed through the stairwell door into the street-level exit. I have less. She went back into the hospital the way she'd left it, through the main lobby, unhurried, visible the seamless re-entry of a staff member returning for something forgotten. She badged through the elevator bank. The 4th floor was quieter than the 3rd. The specific stillness of a surgical recovery ward at 7 in the morning, patients in the fragile early hours of post-anesthesia monitors, steady staff moving soft. She found the nursing station at the 4th floor and clocked the layout in the 3 seconds it took to walk past it. 2 nurses on station, 1 physician at a chart. Room 412 at the far end of the corridor door closed. Outside room 412, a man was standing. Dark jacket, civilian, credentials clipped to his breast pocket in the way hospital visitors were issued temporary badges, but the clip was wrong. The angle was wrong. A hospital-issued credential sat naturally on a jacket lapel. This one was positioned with the deliberate visibility of something being displayed rather than worn. Emma had issued field credentials in Afghanistan. She knew what performed legitimacy looked like. She walked directly toward him. The man Garrett, she was certain, before she was 10 feet away, looked up. He clocked her scrubs, her badge, her direction of travel, and did what people with something to hide always did. When a hospital employee approached with purpose, he produced a plausible reason for standing there. He shifted slightly toward the door, lifted his clipboard, looked at it, the body language of someone waiting on a patient update. Emma walked past him. 4 feet, 3, 2. She stopped at the door, put her badge to the reader. The door clicked. "Excuse me," Garrett said. His voice was even, practiced. "Are you Dr. Voss's attending?" Emma pushed the door open. "I'm his nurse," she said without turning around. "Can I help you with something?" A beat, the calculation running behind her back, whether to push, whether to let her in alone, whether the presence of a nurse in the room worked for him or against him. "I'll wait," he said. Emma went inside and pulled the door closed behind her. Voss was awake. He was propped at 30 degrees, post-surgical monitoring lines in place, the gray gone from his face and replaced with something more like the controlled pallor of a man running a very tight pain management calculation. His eyes were sharp. Whatever the anesthesia had taken, it had given most of it back, and already he was present, alert, and the moment Emma came through the door, he looked at her with recognition that was immediate and specific. He knew her, or he knew of her, or he had been told. "Clark," he said. His voice was rough from the intubation but direct. "We have about 3 minutes," Emma said quietly. She moved to the side of the bed, away from the door, keeping her voice below the monitor threshold. "The man outside your door is not hospital staff. His name is Garrett. He's compromised. He's looking for the signal, intercept the second document from your investigation." Voss absorbed this with the specific economy of a man for whom crisis information had been, for most of his life, the primary currency of every important conversation. "Callahan, is trying to get people inside," Emma said. 3 minutes is optimistic. Where's the intercept?" Voss looked at her steadily. "You found the drive," he said. "Under the rail, right side." Something moved in his face, not surprise, but confirmation. The satisfaction of a calculated risk that had paid out exactly as intended. "I didn't know it was you," he said. "Not until the surgery. Hale told me who caught the 4th wound." "Where's the intercept, Admiral?" "Clark." His voice shifted, dropped out of the operational register into something more direct and considerably more difficult. "I sent your unit into that valley. I need you to know that I did not know the clearance was falsified. I need you to know that I have spent 5 years. "I know," Emma said, because she did know. She had known on some level since Callahan told her who Voss was, had known, because a man who had knowingly sent 7 people to die did not spend 2 years privately investigating his own crime. "I know, we can talk about that. Right now I need the intercept location." He held her gaze for a long moment, long enough that she could see the full weight of it: 5 years of guilt, an investigation, and 3 dead colleagues, and 3 bullets in a parking garage, sitting in the lines of his face. Then he said, "It's not a location, it's a person. There's a signals intelligence analyst named Ruth Hayward. She was the one who intercepted the communication the night of the mission, the one that confirmed the clearance was falsified from inside the country. She went into protective custody 14 months ago, when the first researcher on my investigation died." He paused. "She's been in federal witness protection under a name I gave Callahan 8 months ago. A name I also gave one other person." He looked at Emma. "I gave it to Garrett, as a test, to see if she'd be moved." "Was she?" "She was moved 6 months ago," Voss said. "Callahan told me it was a precautionary relocation. Garrett had her moved and told Callahan it was a precaution." A pause. "She doesn't know which of them to trust. Neither did I." He held Emma's eyes. "Until you walked through that door." Emma heard the door handle behind her. Not a knock, just the handle, the slow testing pressure of someone checking whether the door was locked or latched, the specific caution of a person who wanted to know what they were entering before they entered it. She turned. Garrett came in. He had the credentials up, visible, leading the practiced entrance of someone using institutional authority as a wedge. He was 48 years old, medium build, with the kind of face that processed as forgettable and therefore never was to anyone who knew what to look for. His eyes moved from Emma to Voss to Emma in a single sweep, and he smiled the professional clinical smile of a man who had learned to perform harmlessness. "Admiral Voss," he said, "I'm Dr. Garrett from the Federal Health Liaison Office. I just need a few minutes." "He's not receiving visitors," Emma said. Garrett looked at her. The smile didn't change. "I have authorization from the administrator on call, hasn't cleared any federal liaison visits," Emma said. She moved to the foot of the bed, positioning herself between Garrett and Voss without making it look like positioning. "If you have credentials, I'll need to verify them with the charge nurse before you can have patient access. Hospital protocol." She met his eyes. "I'm sure you understand." A silence. Garrett ran his calculation. Emma could see it, the rapid, expert assessment of the room, the angles, the situation. He was good. He was very good. But he was working with incomplete information because he didn't know what Emma knew or what Voss had already told her, and incomplete information was the one disadvantage that no amount of training fully compensated for. Of course, he said. I'll wait in the hall while you verify. He did not move. I'll need your credentials first, Emma said. She held her hand out. Steady, completely steady. Something shifted in Garrett's eyes. Not the smile stayed, but behind it the calculation completed and reached a conclusion she could see arriving a half second before he acted on it. His hand moved toward his jacket, not toward the credential clip. Emma moved first. She did not think about it. She did not decide. The body moved with the specific autonomic speed of training that had been drilled into muscle and nerve until it bypassed the deliberate mind entirely, the same speed that had moved her off the ambush line in Helmand before her conscious brain had fully registered that the shooting had started. She caught his wrist, both hands. She used his own forward momentum against him, redirected him past her and into the wall beside the door with the controlled efficiency of someone who had practiced the movement so many times that it was less a technique than a reflex. His face hit the wall, not hard enough to injure, hard enough to stop, and she had his arm leveraged behind him before the sound of the impact had finished echoing. Garrett made one sound, short, surprised. Then he went still. The professional stillness of a man who recognized that the situation had left the domain he'd prepared for. Don't move, Emma said quietly, into the back of his head. Her voice was completely level. The door burst open. Two men Callahan's people she registered in the half second before her body reacted to the entry came in fast. They clocked the situation in the time it took to cross the threshold, and the taller one said, "Clark, we've got him." And Emma released Garrett's arm and stepped back, and the two men had Garrett secured and moving before Voss had shifted more than 2 inches in his hospital bed. Callahan came in behind them. He looked at Emma, at Garrett against the wall, at the room. 4 minutes, Emma said. You said less, Callahan said. I was faster. Callahan looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Garrett, the look of a man confronting the specific ugly reality of a betrayal that had been theoretical until this moment and was now standing 3 feet in front of him in a hospital room in New Jersey with the face of someone he had worked beside and trained with and trusted at a level that very few people ever reached. Garrett, he said. Garrett said nothing. He had the contained, empty expression of a man who had already moved past the scene in front of him to whatever came next, the interrogation, the legal architecture, the long institutional process of being dismantled. He was not going to give Callahan the satisfaction of a reaction. Callahan turned away from him. To Voss. Admiral, are you all right? Thanks to your nurse, Voss said. She's not my nurse, Callahan said. No. Voss agreed. He looked at Emma. She's her own. Emma stood at the foot of the bed with her heart rate coming back down from the controlled spike it had taken in the 30 seconds of the intervention. Her hands were still. Her breathing was even. She was doing the inventory she always did after contact, not just physical, but everything. What she knew. What had changed. What came next. What came next was Garrett in federal custody, and 2 agents who would need statements, and Callahan, who needed the drive, and a name that was still somewhere on that encrypted document that she still hadn't let out of her possession. She reached into her scrub top. She held the drive out to Callahan. He took it carefully. He looked at it the way people look at things that have cost a significant amount to reach. We'll need a forensic authentication team, he said. Secure facility. This goes nowhere near anyone Garrett had access to. Ruth Hayward, Emma said. Find her first, before anyone who had Garrett's access knows he's in custody. Callahan looked at her sharply. Voss told me, Emma said. She's been moved. She needs to be secured before the people who moved her know the operation is blown. Callahan had his phone out before she finished the sentence. Emma turned back to Voss. He was watching her with that same steady, direct quality he had had since she walked in, the look of a man who had been in enough significant moments to know when he was in one. Your unit, he said. What you did tonight, carrying that drive, coming back in here. He paused. You didn't have to do any of it. No, Emma agreed. Why did you? Emma thought about Danny Kowalski and Terrence Webb and 5 other names she said every morning when she woke up quietly to herself, because that was the thing she had decided to do, with the weight of having survived them. She thought about a Valiant Hellman and a mission that was already dead before it launched, and 7 men who had followed their orders because that was what they were trained to do, and because they trusted the intelligence that told them the route was safe. She thought about the Admiral's hand on the gurney rail. Because someone asked the right question in the right direction, she said, and the least I can do is follow it to the answer. Voss held her gaze. Sergeant Clark, he said, the rank, deliberate, restored. I'm going to tell you something and I need you to hear it fully. He paused. What happened in that valley was not your failure, was not their failure. It was mine. The investigation, the 3 dead researchers, the 5 years, those are my debt to pay, not yours. He stopped, but I could not have gotten this close without you, tonight or any of what came before. His voice held steady. I'm sorry. For all of it. I'm sorry. Emma stood with it. She let it be real. She did not minimize it, did not deflect, did not do any of the things that 7 months of deliberate invisibility had trained her to do with things that were too large for easy handling. She let the apology land exactly where it was aimed. I know, she said finally. Outside the room, she could hear Callahan's voice rapid-clipped the operational register of a man running an extraction protocol across a phone line. The 2 agents had Garrett in the corridor moving toward the elevator bank. The floor was beginning its morning activity, ordinary hospital time resuming around an extraordinary axis. Emma stood at the threshold of room 412. She had 9 minutes before her 7:30 meeting with a room that no longer had anyone in it waiting to harm her. She had a shift she'd been suspended from. She had a drive that was now in the right hands. She had 7 names, she said every morning. And she had, for the first time in 5 years, the specific feeling of a debt being repaid. Not in full, not yet the name on the document, still unspoken. The full accountability, still unresolved but in motion. Moving, aimed correctly. She thought about what Callahan had said outside the hospital. Nobody watches a 7-month rookie nurse in New Jersey. She thought about Linda asking if she was okay. She thought about Kang saying be careful in the medication prep room at 4 in the morning. She thought about the gauze pads and the supply room and 7 months of making herself small in a building that needed her to be exactly as large as she was. She straightened her back. She put her hands at her sides. She walked back out onto the 4th floor, steady, unhurried, completely awake, and the morning moved around her exactly the way it was supposed to. The authentication took 6 hours. Emma knew this because Callahan called her at 2:17 in the afternoon while she was sitting in her apartment for the first time in what felt like a week, still in her scrubs with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched, in the specific hollow alertness of someone running on the wrong side of 24 hours without sleep. She had not been able to rest, not because she was afraid fear had burned itself out somewhere, ranged around the 4th floor corridor, but because her mind would not stop moving, would not stop running the geometry of everything that had happened since 9:19 the previous evening and everything that had not yet resolved. The drive authenticated, Callahan said. No preamble. The document is intact. The source chain is unbroken. Emma set down the coffee. And a pause. The name, she said. I need you to come in, Callahan said. I need you to hear this in person. Callahan. Her voice was flat and patient in equal measure. I carried that drive for 9 hours. I went back into that hospital alone. I put Garrett against a wall with my bare hands. You do not get to make me drive somewhere to hear a name. A silence, then quietly, Colonel Warren Hess, former Joint Special Operations Task Force Command, retired 14 months ago, currently a senior advisor to the Senate Armed Services Committee. A pause that carried the specific weight of what that title meant. He has active security clearances. He has daily access to intelligence briefings. He has, for the past 14 months since retirement, been sitting in rooms where the decisions about Operation Nightfall's investigation were being discussed. He knew every move Voss made before Voss made it. Emma stood up. She didn't say anything for a moment. She was running the name not against faces. She knew not against the specific personnel change she remembered from 2020, but against the document she'd never seen the clearance. She'd never personally traced the authorization that had sat at the top of the route confirmation like a signature on a death warrant. Warren Hess. I know that name, she said. I know you do, Callahan said quietly. She knew it because he had briefed her unit 48 hours before the mission. A standard pre-mission intelligence review, senior command walking the team through the operational picture, confirming the intelligence picture, authorizing the route clearance. She had been in the back of the briefing tent. She had listened. She had looked at a man in a colonel's uniform who spoke with the specific, settled confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times, and she had thought the way you think about the weather, that the intelligence was solid because the man presenting it was solid because the system that produced him was solid. She had thought that. 7 men had died because she had thought that. "Clark," Callahan's voice brought her back. "Are you with me?" "I'm here," she said. Her voice was steady. She noted the steadiness with something that was not satisfaction, something more functional than that. The simple recognition that she was not going to fall apart in this moment, because falling apart was a thing that happened after, and this was not after yet. "There's a complication," Callahan said. "Of course there is," Emma said. "Hess became aware of Garrett's arrest approximately 90 minutes ago. We don't know the source. Our containment was immediate but not instantaneous. He has not attempted to flee. He has not contacted legal representation." A pause. "He contacted his office at the Senate Armed Services Committee, attended his 11 o'clock briefing, and is currently at lunch at a restaurant 4 blocks from the Capitol." Emma absorbed that. "He's not running." "No, because he doesn't think the drive is enough," she said. "He knows Ruth Hayward is the corroborating witness, and he knows Garrett was the only person who had her location. He thinks Garrett contained the situation before he was arrested." She paused. "He doesn't know Voss told me about Hayward." Callahan was quiet for a moment. "Which means he doesn't know the intercept is in play." "Which means he thinks he's still protected," Emma said. "He went to his meeting because he's not afraid. He's not afraid because he doesn't know what we have." She stood in the middle of her apartment thinking fast. "How long before Hayward is secured?" "She was moved to a DOJ safe house 40 minutes ago," Callahan said. "She's been interviewed. The signal intercept she held is authenticated. Combined with the drive contents, we have a complete evidentiary chain." He paused. "The DOJ has enough to move, but they want the arrest clean, no advance warning, no opportunity for Hess to activate his Senate relationships before the charges are filed." Another pause. "They're moving tonight." "Then it's done," Emma said. "Almost," Callahan said. She heard something in the word, something that told her the conversation had not reached its actual destination yet, that the preceding 2 minutes had been the runway, and this was where it turned into something else. "What are you not saying?" she asked. A long pause, long enough that Emma identified it precisely as the pause of a man deciding how much of the truth served the situation. "Hayward gave her interview," Callahan said. "She authenticated the intercept, but she also, in the course of the interview, provided information about a second layer of the operation that we didn't know existed." He stopped. "Hess wasn't operating alone in 2020. The falsified clearance required 2 signatures at the task force command level. Hess was one. The second signature belongs to someone who is still active duty." A pause. "Still in a command position, currently overseeing SEAL unit deployments." Emma sat down on the edge of her couch. "There are active units in the field right now," she said. "Yes. Operating under intelligence that may be compromised." "We don't know the scope yet," Callahan said. "That's what we don't know. We know the second signatory exists. We know their clearance level. We know the commands they currently oversee." His voice tightened. "We don't have the name. It wasn't on the drive. Hayward didn't have it. Voss..." He stopped. "Voss doesn't know," Emma said. "Voss identified Hess. That was the end of his chain. The second signature was buried deeper. Different protocol, different authorization pathway. Hess protected it. For 5 years, Hess protected it. Because the second person was more valuable than he was," Emma said, "or more dangerous to expose." "Or both," Callahan said. Emma thought about it. She thought about it with the same bold, calm, clear focus she had used in the trauma bay the previous night, not chasing the obvious path, but looking at the geometry of the whole thing. 2 signatures. One retired sitting comfortably at lunch 4 blocks from the Capitol because he thought his protection was intact. One still active, still in command, still connected to the live operation. "Garrett knew," she said. Callahan went still on the line. She could hear it, the specific quality of silence that meant she'd landed on something. Garrett was the one who moved Hayward, Emma said. Garrett knew Hayward's location because Hess gave it to him, which means Hess trusted Garrett with operational details that only someone with the full picture would have. She paused. Garrett knew about the second signature. He was protecting both of them. Garrett is not talking, Callahan said. I know, Emma said. He won't, not voluntarily. She paused, but he moved Hayward to a specific location. The relocation left a record, a protocol trail, a request through the witness protection apparatus. Whoever authorized that relocation at the federal level had to have a name attached to the request. A silence. That's a federal records request, Callahan said. It takes someone with the right access and the right relationship with the right federal records office, Emma said. How long? Hours, maybe less if I push the right people. A pause. Clark, you've been awake for... Don't, she said. How long? 3 hours, he said. Maybe 2. Call me when you have it, she said, and hung up. She sat in the quiet of her apartment and let herself feel for the first time since the previous evening the full accumulated weight of the past 18 hours. Not grief, not yet, that was still waiting further down the road. The specific reckoning with 5 years of silence that was going to arrive when the immediate operation concluded, and there was nothing left to focus on but the thing itself. Not anger. Anger had been her companion for so long that it no longer registered as an emotion so much as a background condition. Not even satisfaction, though the drive was authenticated and Garrett was in custody and Hess was going to be arrested tonight. What she felt sitting alone in her apartment at 2:30 in the afternoon was something closer to exhaustion of a specific kind, the exhaustion that comes at the point in a long mission when the first objective has been secured and the next objective is still ahead, and the body knows with the pragmatic honesty of something that has been running too long that there is still a distance to cover before rest is possible. She closed her eyes. She said 7 names. She opened in them. She went to change out of her scrubs. Callahan called back at 4:51. The relocation authorization, he said. The name on the federal request for Hayward's transfer it's not a direct name. It's a designation. A clearance code tied to a specific command position. He paused. The position is Rear Admiral Naval Special Warfare Command, Pacific Operations Oversight. Emma stood very still. Current holder, she said. Rear Admiral James Colton, Callahan said. 49 years old. Commissioned 2001. Decorated SEAL Commander, 2 combat deployments, promoted to Rear Admiral 18 months ago. Currently overseeing 6 active SEAL unit deployments across the Pacific Theater. A pause. He was a lieutenant commander in 2020. He was the secondary intelligence officer on the task force command that authorized Operation Nightfall. Emma thought about the briefings tent in Helmand. She thought about the man in the colonel's uniform, Hess, standing at the front. She thought about who had been standing to his left, slightly back, with a lieutenant commander's insignia and a tablet in his hands. She had not remembered that face. She remembered it now. He was in the briefing, she said. I know, Callahan said. He stood there and he briefed my unit on the route clearance that he had already signed off on falsifying, Emma said. Her voice was still level. She was making a conscious, continuous effort to keep it level. He looked at 7 people and told them the route was safe. Yes, Callahan said. The words sat there. Emma breathed, in and out, the deliberate respiratory discipline she'd learned in a field medic program and used in varying circumstances for the past 8 years. How active are his current deployments, she said. 3 of the 6 units are in operational phases right now, Callahan said. The intelligence supporting 2 of those operations was reviewed and authorized by Colton's command in the past 6 weeks. You need to flag those operations, Emma said immediately, before anything else, before the arrest, before anything public. You flag those operations and you get independent intelligence review on whatever Colton signed off on in the past 2 months. Because if he's been running the same play, it's already in motion, Callahan said. I flagged it 20 minutes ago. The operations have been paused pending review. A pause. 3 teams pulled back from active operational phases. The unit commanders are not happy. The unit commanders would be less happy if the play got run on their people the way it got run on mine, Emma said. Yes, Callahan said. They would. A silence. What happens now, Emma said. DOJ moves on Hess tonight, Callahan said. Colton's arrest follows within the hour. They have to move simultaneously or Colton gets tipped. Both arrests are coordinated. He paused. The Senate Armed Services Committee will be notified informally 30 minutes before the arrests, which is protocol for a sitting member's advisor. The notification will come from the Attorney General's office. Another pause. This is going to be significant, Clark. This is not a quiet administrative action. This is going to be public. Emma thought about that. About the specific institutional earthquake of 2 men at those levels, being arrested on charges that connected directly to the deaths of 7 SEAL team members in Afghanistan. About the investigation that would follow the review of every operation either man had touched the cascade of institutional reckoning that moved outward from a single drop charge like water from a stone. She thought about a falsified clearance report sitting in a classified file for 5 years while she counted gauze pads in New Jersey. Good, she said. There's one more thing, Callahan said. His voice had shifted again, the same register change she'd heard at 4 a.m. when he dropped the operational smoothness. The register of a person about to say something that cost them something to say. The original unknown caller this morning, the one who warned you about Garrett. Emma had been waiting for this. Who was it? His name is Martin Reyes, Callahan said. He's a former DIA signals analyst. He was the one who filed the descent report 48 hours before your mission launched, the one that was buried. He's been trying to surface the evidence for 5 years. A pause. He was also the one who contacted us 8 months ago to flag that Voss's investigation was getting close to a real answer. He's the one who put Voss and our unit in contact in the first place. Another pause. He's been the thread connecting the pieces for 5 years without anyone knowing his name. Emma stood with that. He knew my name, she said. He called me by rank. He knew your unit, Callahan said. He knew all of them. He filed that descent report because he'd read the intelligence and he'd seen the specific signature pattern that told him the clearance had been manufactured. He knew what was going to happen. His voice dropped. He couldn't stop it. He tried and he was buried and he couldn't stop it. He's been living with that for 5 years too. Emma absorbed this. The image of it, a signals analyst sitting in a government building somewhere reading an intelligence document, seeing the seam in it, filing a report that went nowhere, and then waiting for the casualty notification that came 48 hours later, carrying it for 5 years. I want to talk to him, Emma said. He wants to talk to you, Callahan said. He asked me specifically if that would be possible. A pause. He said he asked me to tell you that he's sorry he wasn't louder, that he should have gone further with the descent, that if he'd pushed harder. Tell him it wasn't his failure, Emma said. Quietly, clearly, tell him I said exactly that. A silence. I'll tell him, Callahan said. When do the arrests happen? 9 p.m., Callahan said. 3 hours. Will you call me? Emma said. Yes, he said. I'll call you when it's done. She hung up. She sat back down on the couch. The apartment was very quiet. The afternoon light was doing what afternoon light does in October in New Jersey, going from gold to amber. The slow, warm descent of a day that had asked a great deal and was finally beginning to release. Emma sat in it. She thought about Voss in room 412, with the gray gone from his face and his voice rough from the intubation and 5 years of guilt sitting in the lines around his eyes. She thought about what he'd said, I'm sorry, for all of it. She thought about receiving that and what it had felt like to let it land instead of deflecting it. Strange? Necessary? Like setting down something she hadn't known she was still carrying. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that she recognized immediately as Kang's personal cell. He'd given it to Linda once during a supply issue, and Emma had seen it on the charge desk and filed it away the way she filed everything. I heard about the suspension. That's not right. I'm going to the review board. Emma looked at the message for a long moment. She typed back, don't, I appreciate it, but don't, it'll resolve itself. A pause, then, how are you sure? She almost typed something clinical and deflecting. She stopped herself. Because some things are moving in the right direction, she typed, for the first time in a long time. A longer pause. Then, okay, I'll trust that. Take care of yourself, Clark. Emma put the phone down. She thought about the 7 names. She said them quietly to herself in the afternoon light of her apartment, the way she did every morning. Danny Kowalski, Terrence Webb, Marcus Green, Jalen Ford, Sammy Okafor, Pete Villanueva, Chris Nakamura. 7 names, 5 years, 9 p.m. tonight. 2 men in comfortable positions of power were going to have those names read back to them in a federal building attached to charges that carried the specific permanent consequence of the thing they had done. Emma sat with that. She sat with it for 3 hours. Her phone rang at 9:14. "It's done," Callahan said. Hess had been arrested at his home in Alexandria at 9:02. Colton at his office on the naval base at 9:07. Both in custody, both charged. The DOJ was filing the public notice at 9:30. By 10 o'clock, it would be on every major news outlet in the country, and by morning, the Senate Armed Services Committee would be in emergency session, and by the end of the week, in full scope of Operation Nightfall's betrayal would be moving through the machinery of federal accountability with the kind of institutional momentum that once started did not stop. "Both secure," Emma said. "Both in custody," Callahan confirmed. No resistance. Colton asked for his attorney before they finished reading the charges. "Hess," he paused. Hess didn't say anything. He just looked at the document they handed him. Looked at it for a long time. Then he asked if the casualty names were in the filing. Emma was quiet. "They are," Callahan said. "All 7. She exhaled. "Voss is asking to speak to you," Callahan said. "When you're ready. Not tonight, he's still in recovery. But when you're ready." "I'll go tomorrow," Emma said. "There's also the matter of your employment situation," Callahan said. "The protocol violation, the hospital suspension." A pause. "A formal federal commendation is being prepared. The DOJ and the Naval Special Warfare Command are co-signing it. It will make the specific nature of your service record visible, including the classified deployment, as part of the public record of this investigation." He paused. "I would think that makes the suspension conversation considerably simpler." Emma almost smiled. "Tell them I'll handle my own employment situation." "I expected you to say that," Callahan said. "Callahan." Her voice shifted, not warmer exactly, but more direct. The shift of someone dropping the operational register for something simpler. "Thank you for calling when it was done. You didn't have to do that." A pause. "I said I would," he said. "I know." She paused. "Go home." "You too," he said, and hung up. Emma sat in the quiet apartment with the phone in her lap, in the October dark pressing in from the window, in the particular quality of silence that arrives when something that has been in motion for a very long time finally stops moving and allows the space around it to settle. 7 names, 5 years. Done. Not finished, the trials would take months. The institutional review would take longer. The full accounting of what 2 men's choices had cost was a calculation that would run well past tonight, in federal buildings and military proceedings, in the lives of the people left behind. Not finished, but done. Emma set the phone on the table. She leaned back against the couch. She let her eyes close. She let the tiredness that had been running underneath the adrenaline for 18 hours finally surface, felt it move through her like water filling a space that had been held rigid too long. She thought about Callahan's face outside the hospital at 3 in the morning. Nobody watches a 7-month rookie nurse in New Jersey. She thought about Sutton saying "good catch" in the tone of a man who would never say it again. She thought about Kang in the medication prep room. Why are you counting gauze in a New Jersey emergency room? She thought about the trauma bay, the gurney, the Admiral's hand on the rail. The moment she had moved from the back wall to the table, not asked, not authorized, not seen by anyone in that room as someone capable of what she was about to do. She had moved anyway. That was the whole story, she thought. 7 months or 5 years or 1 critical night, it was all the same story. The story of a person who had learned in the hardest possible way what happened when someone saw the right thing and stayed silent, who had made herself invisible as a survival mechanism and had then in a single moment chosen visibility over safety because the alternative was watching someone die on a table while she counted gauze. She had moved, and then she had kept moving until it was done. She said 7 names one more time quietly in the dark. Then Emma Clark, formerly Staff Sergeant Clark, 3rd SEAL Support Battalion, currently suspended floor nurse at St. Helena Emergency Center, closed her eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, slept without weight. She slept for 11 hours. When Emma woke, it was Thursday morning, and the first thing she did before the coffee, before the phone, before any of the ordinary architecture of a day, was lie still in the specific, unusual quiet of a body that had finally completely released. Not the thin, watchful sleep she'd been running on for 5 years. Real sleep, the kind that leaves a person feeling upon waking like something has shifted in the foundations. She lay still and felt it. Then she got up. Her phone had 14 notifications. She read them in order, standing in her kitchen, with the coffee brewing, cataloging rather than reacting. 3 from Callahan, the last one timestamped at 6 a.m. reading simply, both arraigned, held without bail. DOJ press conference at 10. 2 from unknown numbers she didn't recognize. 1 from Linda, which read, "Call me when you're up." "It's good news." 1 from Kang. "Have you seen the news?" She turned on the television. Warren Hess and Rear Admiral James Colton were the first story on every major network. The DOJ press conference hadn't happened yet, but the arrests had, and the outline of the charges: conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government, falsification of military intelligence conduct, resulting in the deaths of 7 service members, was already being parsed by correspondents who were clearly operating on partial information and doing their best with it. She watched for 4 minutes, long enough to confirm the framework was accurate, long enough to hear the 7 names read aloud on national television by a reporter who pronounced most of them correctly and stumbled slightly on Okafor. She turned it off. She called Linda. HR pulled the protocol report, Linda said before Emma finished saying hello. "Sutton withdrew it at 7 this morning. He called me personally." A pause. "He didn't explain why. He just said the report had been withdrawn and you were reinstated effective immediately." Another pause. "Emma, I watched the news this morning. Was that you, the nurse they're talking about? Because they're not using your name." "But it was me," Emma said. A silence. Long enough that Emma could hear Linda processing it, running 7 months of the quiet, efficient, perpetually under-challenged floor nurse she'd thought she knew against the outline of what she was seeing on the morning news. "You've been here 7 months, Linda said finally. "Yes." "Counting gauze," Linda said. "Yes." "Emma." Linda's voice had changed, the professional charge nurse register gone entirely, replaced by something more personal and more bewildered. "You were a SEAL combat medic." "SEAL support," Emma said. "There's a distinction." "A distinction," Linda repeated. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh. I've been assigning you supply inventory for 7 months." "The supply inventory needed to be done," Emma said. "Emma." "Linda." Emma's voice was gentle but firm. "I needed somewhere quiet. This was the right place at the right time. I don't regret a single shift." A pause, then Linda said quietly, "Are you coming back?" Emma looked at the blank television. She thought about the floor, the trauma bays, the specific ordinary rhythm of an emergency room that processed other people's worst moments, with the steady practice competence of a team that had gotten very good at exactly that. She thought about what Kang had said. "Why are you counting gauze in a New Jersey emergency room?" She had answered him with the truth. I needed somewhere quiet. She needed to decide if that was still true. "I don't know yet," she said. "I'll call you this afternoon." She hung up. She went to see Voss at 10:30. The 4th floor was different in the morning, brighter, more active, the rhythms of a post-surgical recovery ward in full operational swing. Emma walked the corridor to room 412 and knocked once and went in, and Voss was sitting up straighter than the day before. The monitoring lines reduced some of the pallor, replaced by something that looked cautiously like recovery. He looked at her when she came in and said nothing for a moment. Just looked. The way he'd looked at her in the trauma bay and in this room the previous morning, with the specific direct quality of someone who had been thinking about a person and was now taking the opportunity to look at them properly. "You slept," he said. 11 hours, she said. "Good." He indicated the chair beside the bed. She sat. "You saw the news." "This morning," she said. Callahan came in at 6, Voss said. "Told me in person. He's old-fashioned that way." A pause. "Both secured, both charged. The second signature..." He stopped. His jaw tightened once. "Colton was in my command structure in 2020. I brought him up. I advocated for his advancement. He was quiet for a moment. I trained him. Emma said nothing. I have been running this investigation for 2 years, Voss said. I thought when I identified Hess that was the end. That was the answer I'd been building toward. And then Hayward told the DOJ about the second signature and he stopped again. I didn't know. I want you to understand that I genuinely did not know. I believe you, Emma said. He looked at her. How can you? Because the man who knew would not have spent 2 years building a case that leads directly to himself, Emma said, and because 3 researchers died during your investigation. If you'd been running cover rather than running the investigation, they'd still be alive. She held his gaze. You're responsible for the mission. You are not responsible for the betrayal inside it. Those are different things. Voss absorbed that the way he absorbed everything quietly, completely, without deflecting it into something smaller. Your unit, he said, the 7 men. Yes. I've read every file, every service record, every personal history the military maintains. He paused. I know their names. I've known their names for 5 years. But he stopped. His voice had thinned slightly, the voice of a man asking something that cost him something to ask. I want to know who they were. Not the files, I want to know who they actually were. Emma sat with that for a moment. She had not talked about them. Not once in 5 years to anyone who hadn't been there. She had carried their names as a private ritual, a morning accounting, a way of honoring the fact of them without opening the specific dangerous territory of who they had been when they were alive. She opened it now. She told him about Danny Kowalski, who was 29 and from Pittsburgh and had a daughter named Isla he'd seen in photographs but never in person, and who could make anyone laugh in any situation, including the ones where laughing was the last reasonable response. She told him about Terrence Webb, who was 26 and from Houston, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of every engine ever manufactured and the specific, unshakable conviction that any mechanical problem had a solution if you were patient enough to look for it. She told him about Marcus Green, who was 31 and from Atlanta, and read poetry in his downtime and was embarrassed about it until he wasn't. About Jalen Ford, who was 27 and the best shot in the unit and the worst cook, and had somehow convinced everyone that these 2 facts balanced each other out. About Sam Okafor, who was 28 and from Lagos originally, and from Boston adoptively, and who wanted, when his service was done, to study international law. About Pete Villanueva, who was 30 and from San Antonio, and sent money home every month to a mother who still called him Mijo and still put his school photos on the refrigerator. About Chris Nakamura, who was 25 and from Seattle, and was the youngest of them and the most serious, and had a seriousness that came from caring too much about everything rather than too little. She talked for 20 minutes. Voss listened without moving. When she finished, the room was very quiet. He was looking at the far wall with an expression that had moved well past the professional emotional management that senior military officers developed over decades. He was just a man in a hospital bed receiving the full weight of what 7 names actually meant, delivered by the one person left who had known those names in motion rather than in memoriam. Thank you, he said. His voice was rough. They deserved to be known, Emma said, simply. He looked at her. What do you want, he asked. Not what happens next with the case, not the institutional resolution. What do you want after all of this? Emma thought about it honestly. I want to go back to the floor, she said. She heard it as she said it, heard the truth of it, unexpected in its clarity. I want to go back to St. Helena and do my job. Not because I need to hide anymore. Because it's a good job and I'm good at it, and the people coming through those doors need someone who knows how to pay attention when everything else is moving too fast. Voss studied her. That's a significant downgrade from what you're capable of, he said. Not a criticism, a genuine observation, the observation of a man who had spent a career calibrating talent to role. It's not a downgrade, Emma said. It's a choice, she paused. Callahan offered me something, his unit, a formal role in the investigation infrastructure case analysis field assessment. She had not told anyone this. Callahan had called at 8 that morning before the news and laid it out with the straightforward precision she had come to associate with him, the role, the mandate, the specific things her skills would serve in that context. She had listened. She had not said yes or no. She had told him she would call him. I'm not going to take it. Why not? Voss asked. Because I've been a weapon long enough, Emma said. I want to be something else for a while. Voss was quiet for a long moment. A nurse in a New Jersey emergency room, he said. A very good nurse in a New Jersey emergency room, Emma said. Something moved through his face. Not quite a smile, something more complicated than that. The expression of a man who had spent years in command positions making calculations about people and their value, and was encountering in this conversation a metric that his calculations didn't fully accommodate. All right, he said, I respect that. Good, she said, because I wasn't asking. He did almost smile then, a fraction of it. No, he said, I noticed. Emma stood up. She had one more thing, and she said it standing because it was the kind of thing that needed to be said on her feet. When you're out of here, when the case is through the system and you have time, I'd like you to come meet someone. She paused. Martin Reyes, the analyst who filed the dissent report. He's been carrying the failure to stop this for 5 years too. He deserves to not carry it alone anymore. Voss looked at her. You haven't met him yourself. Not yet, Emma said, but I will. And when I do, I'd like you to be there. He nodded. Done. She left. In the corridor outside room 412, she stood for a moment in the particular quality of a hospital morning, the sounds and rhythms that she had learned over 7 months, the way you learn the specific sound of a place you've decided to belong to, the monitors and the PA and the particular footstep patterns of people who knew exactly where they were going and exactly how much time they had to get there. She took out her phone. She called Callahan. He answered immediately. Clark? I've thought about the offer, she said. And no, she said. I appreciate it. It's the right role for someone. It's not the right role for me. A pause. I expected that, he said. Can I ask why? You can, she said, but the answer is mine. A beat, then fair enough. Another pause. The commendation is being finalized. Your service record will be updated. The classified deployment notation will be adjusted to reflect the full scope of your role. Your name will appear in the federal filing as a material participant in the investigation resolution. He paused. People are going to know who you are now. I know, Emma said. That changes things. For your floor job. I know that too, she said. I'll handle it. Clark. His voice shifted, the same drop out of operational register she'd heard twice before. The register of a person speaking plainly rather than professionally. You did something this week that most people trained, experienced, specifically equipped people could not have done. The drive Garrett Hayward, the second signature. Any one of those pieces on its own is significant. All of them together in 36 hours. He stopped. I've been in this work for 19 years. What you did this week? Callahan, Emma said gently. He stopped. 7 men went to work one morning and didn't come home, she said. I came home. I've spent 5 years trying to figure out what to do with that. What happened this week is part of the answer. She paused. Not all of it, but part of it. She looked down the corridor toward the elevator bank, toward the stairwell that led down to the 3rd floor, toward the ordinary business of a hospital that was still moving with the steady indifference of a place that never stopped needing people who knew how to pay attention. The rest of the answer is down on the 3rd floor. A silence. Take care of yourself, Callahan said. You too, she said, and meant it. She took the stairs. Sutton was in his office when she knocked on the open door at 11:15. He looked up from whatever he was reading and looked at her for a long moment with the expression she was becoming accustomed to, the recalibration expression, the face of a man adjusting his internal picture of a person to match new information. Clark, he said, I wanted to thank you for withdrawing the report, she said. He shook his head once. Don't thank me for that. I should have. He stopped. Come in, sit down. She sat. Sutton set down what he was reading. He looked at her directly with the specific quality of a man who had made a decision about how to have a conversation and was having it. I watched the press conference at 10, he said. I know what you did. Not just last night in the trauma bay, all of it. Most of it isn't public yet, Emma said. Kang told me about the parking structure, Sutton said. About Callahan. He was worried about you. He came to me at 7 this morning. He paused. I shouldn't have filed the report. Kang told me not to. He was right. You were following protocol, Emma said. I was protecting myself from a difficult conversation, Sutton said. That's not the same thing. He held her gaze. You saved Voss in this building because you have skills that no one in this building knew about. Those skills exist because you serve this country in conditions that I cannot fully imagine. And my response was to write a protocol violation report. He was quiet for a moment. That is not something I'm comfortable with. It's done, Emma said. It's over. It should have been done differently, Sutton said. From the beginning, if I had taken the time to actually look at who you were when you came on 7 months ago, I didn't want to be looked at, Emma said. I wanted to be left alone. You gave me that. At the time, it was exactly what I needed. She paused. What I need now is different. Sutton looked at her. What do you need now? Emma thought about it. I need to come back to the floor, she said, as the person who made herself invisible, not as the person everyone is watching because of what happened this week. Just as a nurse who is very good at her job and wants to keep doing it. She met his eyes. I need the team to understand that nothing has changed about how I intend to work. The news, the federal commendation, the service record, that's all external. In this building, I'm a floor nurse. That's it. Sutton studied her. I can work with that, he said. And I want trauma bay rotation, she said. I'm done with supply inventory. Sutton held her gaze for one long moment. Then he said, done. Emma nodded. She stood up. She was halfway to the door when Sutton said, Clark. She stopped. I'm sorry, he said. Not the clinical sorry, the real one. For the 7 men and for the years it took to get to the truth. Emma stood in the doorway. Me too, she said. She walked out onto the floor. Linda was at the nursing station. She looked up when Emma came around the corner, and her face did something complicated, the relief and the discomfort and the residual bewilderment, all moving through it in rapid sequence before settling on something simpler and more fundamental. You're back, Linda said. I'm back, Emma said. Trauma bay rotation, Linda said. She had clearly already spoken to Sutton. Starting today? Starting now, Emma said. Linda looked at her for one more second, the full unguarded look of someone who was seeing a person clearly for the first time and was adjusting to the specific, unexpected quality of what was actually there. Then she picked up the duty roster and made a notation with the brisk efficiency of a charge nurse who had a floor to run and had just gotten one of her best people back. Trauma Bay 1, Linda said. You've got it. Emma took the roster. She looked at it. She put it down and picked up a chart and started reading. She was 3 pages into the overnight notes when the radio crackled. Trauma Bay 1, MV A multiple, ET, A 6 minutes. Emma set the chart down. She looked up. Kang was at the far end of the station. He had come in while she was reading and was looking at her with the same expression he'd worn in the medication prep room 2 nights ago, the expression of a man who had asked a question and was still turning the answer over. He met her eyes. Emma gave him one small nod. He nodded back. The nod of a person who understood not everything, not the full history, but the thing that mattered right now, which was that the person standing in Trauma Bay 1 was exactly the right person to be standing there. Emma walked into the bay. She positioned herself at the left side of the table. She rolled her shoulders once. She looked at the door through which the gurney would come in 4 minutes, and she felt the specific clear-eyed readiness that she had spent 5 years carrying as a burden finally settle into something different. Not a weight, but a resource. Not a debt to the dead, but a gift from them. Everything they had taught her, everything she had learned in the hardest possible school available, now not for a classified mission in a foreign valley, but for the next person who came through that door in the worst moment of their life. She was ready. She had always been ready. The difference, the thing that 5 years of counting gauze and 11 hours of real sleep in a federal investigation and 7 names spoken aloud in a hospital room had finally fully changed, was that she was no longer ready in spite of what had happened to her. She was ready because of it. The radio crackled again. 2 minutes out, Emma Clark, Staff Sergeant Combat Medic, floor nurse, the woman nobody saw coming, stood at the table, put her hands at her sides and waited. The doors opened. She moved.